Welcome to Womenpreneur Asia, the podcast that celebrates the journeys and stories of remarkable women entrepreneurs across the region. I'm your host, Krista Gun, and welcome to Season 9. This episode is sponsored by Reebok Studio. Now, ever since I started my podcast, many business owners have asked me how they too could start their own podcast that I decided to write an ebook, sharing everything that I do in my podcast, including the strategy and technical know-how. If starting a podcast is something you like to explore this year, check out my brand new ebook, Podcasting Power, at womenpreneurasia.com. Today we have an inspiring story to share, the journey of Sharyne Fong from Suva, Fiji. I met Sharyne when we were both part of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework Program in the US. We traveled in a group to Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and Seattle to explore and learn about entrepreneurship in the US. During the trip, we truly connected as the both of us are passionate about women and business. From a 30-year career in financial services to founding her own consultancy, Insight Business Advisory, Sharyne's story speaks of adaptability, optimism, and courage, plus a desire to support and grow the women on her island nation. This was a great conversation where we explored something she struggled with, pricing her consultancy services. This is something most of us struggle with when we first embark on our businesses, especially if it's a service business. Let's dive into this empowering conversation and episode with Sharyne Fong. Hi Sharyne, welcome to Womenpreneur Asia.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be joining and meeting you as a podcaster, especially during our trip to the US. And I've always wanted to do something like this, but I've never had the courage to. Thank you for having me.
I think that is such a lovely compliment, because I know that both of us have a lot in common, and we will get into the areas of commonality later. But right now, Sharyne, where are you? Where are you talking to me from?
I'm talking from the comfort of my home in the beautiful island of Fiji. And in Suva, Fiji, the capital of Fiji.
And Sharyne, you have had quite an entrepreneurial journey. Could you introduce yourself and what do you do as a business owner?
So I'm Sharyne Fong, and I run my own consultancy, business advisory called Insight Business Advisory. I started this back in 2019. In fact, I started thinking about this way earlier, around 2017, 2018. You know how my background is in the financial services industry, and was working for around 30 plus years in that industry. And I just got to a stage where I don't know what to say. Maybe I was just getting to a stage that I wasn't happy. And happy meaning I wasn't, feeling that fulfillment going into work. So I decided that I needed to do something. And I saw the challenges of a lot of entrepreneurs coming in and seeking help. And I said, that's something I could do. And it wasn't until 2019 that I decided to start my business. I registered my company. I started doing all of the background checks around, whether I should be a sole trader or a limited liability company. Then I finally decided that I needed to separate my personal, family investments and income from my business, and I decided to register a limited liability company. So that was in 2019, March, when I took that bold leap and ventured out. And at the time, I kind of was not comfortable with, that's not the word, confident in terms of pricing. So what I did before I started was I listed down all of my experiences and all of the tasks and activities that I always did in my corporate job. And I said, I could make money out of this. But you know what? I didn't know how to price. I wasn't confident pricing, and I'm glad that at the time I was a member of the Women Entrepreneurs Business Council, or WEBC for short, in Fiji, and that's one of the councils under the Master Federation called the Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation. I was very fortunate. I had a tribe of supportive women as part of that council, and there was a particular lady. Bless her, she's now since passed on, but she helped me. She worked at one of the donor agencies, and I asked her to sort of guide me in terms of how I should be pricing. And she helped me and she said, Sharyne, that's your lowest. Do not go anything lower than that. Don't even feel bad about saying it if anybody asks you. So for me, that was a challenge, and I honestly felt really kind of not confident in pricing when people would say, oh, how much would it cost you if you had to do our strategic planning? I seriously had to stay up, number of nights talking to myself and said, no, I can do it, but will they take it because I'm pricing at this, or will they not? And for me, that was one of the things. And the other thing I did, Krista, was before I started and ventured out, I made sure that I got myself registered as an approved business advisor. Because for me, that was around credibility, about my background experience. So I got this sort of approval or certification through the Business Link Pacific. Now, Business Link Pacific is a New Zealand-funded program for the Pacific, mainly supporting and targeting MSMEs in the Pacific. So I got myself registered and had to go through a whole lot of tests and give examples of everything that I did and past experience. And for me, that was one of the best things I did, in fact, rather than just step out into the wild and then slowly start to realize myself. So through WebC, I managed to get a lot of clients. And I must say, because they were women, they were the first to be asking and supporting me through my initial client jobs. And I struggled a little bit with getting male or men who owned businesses, but through word of mouth and women who led and owned their businesses, when they reached out to me and saw that I was providing appropriate support and business advisory services around strategic planning, their organizational reviews. As part of that, also I would look at governance and the whole organizational structures. And then they realized that, okay, she's got talent. And then slowly word of mouth started. And I'm also, glad that I managed to secure my primary client very early as well. And that's Leadership Fiji. So through my company, I provide the services of being the Chief Executive Officer. But then again, that's one of the most fulfilling things I've done. One of the most fulfilling clients that I've had, amongst others that I have provided services for.
I'm glad you brought it up, is the fact about pricing, right? I think we don't really realize how important that aspect is to our business and towards the sustainability of our businesses, because without the right pricing, we could be pricing ourselves out of business. Yeah. When you were saying that you were not confident pricing and this wonderful lady came along and helped you with it, what was the initial feeling about pricing for you before you met her? And what was the feeling after when you met her and she said, I suppose she sat down with you and you had a discussion about pricing and how to price certain services. How did that feel before and after?
When I started listing, I mentioned I had started listing down my services, what all my experience and how I could make. All I knew was, I've got a lot of experience, I can make money. And then I was going, oh my gosh, then how do I actually price? I've got all this experience in strategic planning, organizational reviews, in training. I've done so much facilitation in terms of training, designing training, and all of that. And I was having actually sleepless nights. I think that was my biggest fear and uncertainty, is stepping out. Whilst I was very confident that I had all of this and I could make money, I honestly was having sleepless nights, because being in the corporate world, everything is already done, right? We just do the job and we get paid. But this time I was stepping out as an entrepreneur and trying to figure out, how am I going to make a living with all of this experience, and yet I don't know how to charge or price. And so through the Women Entrepreneurs Business Council and that wonderful lady, she's since passed on, and I always remember and I always acknowledge, we had many catch-ups. I had to reach out to her and ask if she wouldn't mind mentoring me to become my pricing coach or mentor. And so we had many coffees. We had many teas and coffees. And I had to list down all of the experiences, and we broke it down. And then she said, look at it from a perspective of how much time would you spend on a particular topic? Like if you had to do it yourself in your corporate world or corporate job, how much time would it take? And so that got me thinking, And then I said, okay, this will take a show. She gave me that exercise. I went and broke it down into time. And then we met again. And it was quite a cumbersome task because it really got me thinking about, processes and everything around it. And so we finally met when I had listed all of it down, big homework to do. And then she said, okay, for this type of service, you will price this. And because she worked in the donor field, she had experience seeing proposals come through from consultants and all that. And so I was very fortunate that, and I'm glad I reached out to her because she said, you price at this level without saying the dollar value and never go below it. And I'm going, oh, okay. And so I went back and pulled out my calculator and my Excel spreadsheet and said, okay, if I do this many of training, I do this many strategic planning in a year and this much organizational reviews, policies, governance, I can make this much in a year. And I was kind of excited. But then when my first client came and my first request came, I was frightened. I honestly didn't know whether if I priced at this, would they take it? And I was saying, okay, so then what I said was, okay, I will give you the first 2 hours free. And then thereafter, if there's a job, because I needed to do interviews and understand needs and all of that and do that initial assessment. If there's a job after, then you pay me this much. Is it okay? I'm glad this lady stayed by me because after that, I continued to catch up with her even after I started. And she kept checking in on me. I was giving her feedback on everything that I was doing and what I was saying. And she goes, you never ever say that to anyone. Is it okay? You just price? She said, never do that. You know your value. You know the quality of what you're offering. You never ask anyone if whatever you're saying is okay. And you never give a freebie. Cut down, maybe you just do an hour of catch up, and that's it. Never 2 hours or more. So I started slowly getting that confidence as I got onto more clients, and especially when I had a lot of the support from my women friends and tribe that, they helped me through. And even some of them were reminding me, Sharyne, don't worry, I think you're cutting yourself too low, and that was a reality check for me. But I guess now, understanding my value and everything that I do, I confidently just quote and quote a price. And although this price has been set from 5 years ago, I really need to relook at it.
Review your pricing.
Yes, because inflation and the cost of everything has increased, and I'm still giving the same hourly rate or daily rate. Even my husband says to me, sometimes you should just stop talking and stop giving free advice because the clock is ticking as well. So I guess now I'm confident, but now I need to relook at where I sit in the market with regard to market rates for consultancy for the different work that I'd done. Because, 2019 it's like 5 years now. And so that's something that I seriously have to think through.
So looking back at your journey 5 years ago and now, what do you wish you have told the Sharyne who was just starting? Now that you know this conversation about pricing and being confident just to put your package or your services out there and have that courageous conversation with a potential client.
So with my clients, no problem, because I'm telling them exactly what I've learned. Don't be afraid. You will price for quality. You have to price for consistency. You have to price for value. You know your value. Easy to say, yeah, now that I've gone through it myself. And, if I had to look back, what I would do is maybe do a little bit of test or pilots or get together a forum or a group and just say, look, this is what I'm intending to do. What are your thoughts? But I just jumped straight into it. And I wish I had a little bit of entrepreneurship training or support. While I had the, my women friends as tribes and support, I am doing entrepreneurship training with the Academy for Women Entrepreneurs with the U.S. Embassy. It's a 7-month program, and everything I always tell my class, I'm now 5 years doing that training. I always tell, I wish I had this before I started my business because I learned so much from them, plus also learned so much in facilitating their learning. And yeah, that's one thing I would have said, and I should have done some kind of training. Although I've done an MBA course, it's not the same. Until you practically go out and do something and do it, the experience is totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I think there's something about getting out there and doing it and really learning. At the end of the day, we probably feel more satisfied with that kind of learning.
Yes.
Because we went through it. But
yes.
I really like how you were so brave to ask another woman to help you and be your mentor in the area that you struggled with. Was it easy?
So I didn't have that problem when I sought out this lady to help me with my pricing and to become my mentor, because I've always had mentors throughout my corporate career. And I've always had men to mentor me, because men are always very straightforward. They talk different, they think different. And that's why and that's how I progressed into fairly senior roles. And that's what I left on. And meeting these ladies, because I was a member of the Women Entrepreneurs Business Council, even when I was in my corporate job. So I had built that relationship. And because we were such a close network in that council, we always shared what we always wanted to do. And I reached out to her without any, fear or any feeling of being judged or anything like that, because she was just so welcoming. I asked her, because she's in that space of donors, sees proposals and all of that. She didn't give me, of course, did not disclose any confidential information, but she wanted to first understand what my experiences were, and if I had to, do it myself in my corporate job, how long it'll take. And then from there, she started to give and engage from it and gave me support. But coming back to that, no, I didn't feel embarrassed or ashamed asking for help. And I think that's one of the big takeaways also for me, is as women, sometimes we feel ashamed or we don't want to put ourselves out there to ask for help. But I didn't, because I knew I had already left, and I needed to survive, and I needed to get that all nutted down in terms of pricing.
I don't know whether you realize this, but you were quite strategic in getting into business, because you joined WebC before you quit your corporate job.
Yeah.
And you were already networking and talking to the women in WebC. And then when you stopped being in a corporate role, you reached out to the lady who helped you, or in a way mentored you, right? I would say mentor more than help, mentored you to lock down your pricing and all that. So my key learning from that is that you really have to dig your well before you're thirsty, right?
Yes, that's an important component in anything, not only in starting business, but even in your professional career as well. Having a network. And why I joined Women Entrepreneurs Business Council when I was still in my corporate job was for the network, but also for business opportunities, where hopefully some of them become our customers. And that was the reason why I joined. And so, realizing that, I'm in this wide network and they can always help me. So when I approached our chairperson and said, I'm thinking about this, she said, you know what, meet this lady. And so I had just met a lady even when I was still working, who had just started a business and also had just come out of the corporate world. And so she kind of inspired me as well. So, I was getting all of that kind of support and inspiration. But being strategic is important. But one thing definitely is the network. It's important to network beyond your circle, network beyond your comfort zone. I'm also an alumni of our Leadership Fiji program, a 2005 graduate of that program. I just kept connected with the entire alumni network. And, it's all of this. And so when I ventured out and told people that I was, looking and looking for clients and all of that, I went back to, approaching Leadership Fiji, and I managed to secure them as my primary client. So again, the network, maintaining the relationship and ongoing relationship is important. Just staying connected. is a big part of it. And yeah, strategically, but for me, the network, widening my circle of influence. Look, I wouldn't be here today without meeting you even.
I know, right? What a small world.
Exactly.
I really like how you talked about networks, because for me, I think that network is where all your resources, all the good stuff is there. We're just waiting for you to harvest it. It's just that a lot of people don't see that. And like I said, why I mentioned strategic is a lot of people aren't really strategic, right? And sometimes people are very obvious in that they want something from whoever they're talking to or whichever networks they are in. But they also forget the other part of it is that they have to also be a good contributor.
Yes. Yeah. I learned when I attended a Melbourne Business School course, residential course. There's 3 types of people. There's the givers, there's the takers, and there's the matchers. Yeah. So we have to be, for me, I'm a giver. I'm more naturally that. There's some people that will always take and not give back. And then there's the matchers who say, okay, if I give you this, next time you're owing me this. So that's one of the things that I always put out. But for me, I'm a big believer of also giving and being part of. For me, if you give, the more you give, the more you get back. I believe in the universe. I believe in putting my intentions out there. And, slowly I start to see this come to fruition. And people always say, my gosh, you're so busy. You got so much happening. I said, yeah, but I'm loving it. Because that's what I want.
Yes. You put that energy out and the energy is coming back to you in the answer.
Absolutely.
I think even before we get into business, we need to be able to build that network.
Yes.
And that network starts today, right? If you're listening to this episode with me and Sharyne, if you're thinking of building a network, build it today. Start today. And okay, what are some simple ways of building a network, Sharyne? Tell us.
Okay, so simple ways that you could build a network. For me, when I was in my corporate world, I would get a multitude of invitations to cocktails and to dinners and to whatnot with clients. I would not turn down an opportunity unless I'm sick.
Okay.
Or I'm out of town. Yeah, or I'm out of town. Because for me, that was and that was in my corporate job, because I needed to network. I needed to build relationships. I was a relationship manager and I needed to build that and widen my circle. That was from then. And then even after leaving, I still continued to get a lot of invitations. The other thing that I do is join associations and networks. I'm a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, and that's another wide network. So it's an investment, I call it, not an expense. It's an investment to become a member. There's a fee, a joining fee, and also an annual fee. I constantly keep up. I keep up with networking through that aspect. I'm also through the Women Entrepreneurs Business Council that I had mentioned earlier. And through the Leadership Fiji Alumni Network is also reaching out to them when they have events, attend. Some nights I can go to 2 to 3 events. If one starts at 6, I will go, but I will always tell the host, look, I'm going to be here for just an hour. If you don't mind, I've got another event to go to at 7. And if the other event also starts at 6, I will tell the host of that event, look, I will come in late. I've just got another engagement and I will come in late. And I think that's an important aspect, is when you're invited, it's important to always acknowledge and inform your host, whether you're coming, or you're going to be late, how long you're staying for, and acknowledge them when you leave as well. So I think it's about credibility as well. As you build your network, you build trust, you build credibility on yourself as a person. And the other thing is LinkedIn. I use that all the time for my professional networking, and very different to my Facebook, which is more social, family, friends kind of posts. But professional LinkedIn, I use it all the time. And look, I'm glad you reached out also to me on LinkedIn, and we connected even before we even met face-to-face in the US. I guess the important thing is be comfortable with being uncomfortable, meeting new people. And a lot of people shy away from it. Look, I'm naturally an introvert. A lot of people don't believe that. They think I'm a big extrovert because when I go out there, I'm always, engaging and all of that. But I tell you, when I come back home, I'm exhausted. So, so
I think a lot of us who are introverts who take on the role of wanting to be extroverted for just a couple of hours
yes,
at an event, at a conference, right? Or being a host, is that we look upon it as something that we do because it has multiple benefits to us and to the people around us. It makes people more comfortable knowing that this person who's an introvert can actually come up and talk to another person. I
Yeah.
guess it gives them some hope that there is hope for introverts out there. But I think that's the role we play sometimes, right?
Yes.
It's just a role. It's a role that we like, whether you're a manager or a CEO. I mean, sometimes it's a role. So you take on that role because you know that it is going to be helpful either to our business or to the people around us. So I think, yeah, that's why we do what we do.
Yes.
Even though we're exhausted, right? We need a lot of me time after that. We're like, okay, let me just decompress and
Yes.
relax with a cup of tea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just sit on our own. Just sit on my own.
Yeah, and ruminate, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that part is where we share some commonalities. But the other thing that I wanted to also ask you, Sharyne, is what about the challenges?
Yeah. So again, like I said, my challenges were, not getting many clients or businesses, and especially, I hate to say it, but a lot of them tend to think that the men are better advisors. But again, I was fortunate that I was part of this tribe of supportive women entrepreneurs who were my advisors, who were there to sponsor and to also just give word out that, look, she's got a lot of experience, and they were helping me secure business opportunities. And I was fortunate as well to be part of the wider Leadership Fiji network, and through that also had a lot of opportunities. When COVID hit us, because I went in March 2019, I started my company, my business, and I think it was May in 2020 that we went into lockdown because we had our first COVID case. I received calls from my former workmates, and they're saying, hey, are you okay? I really, feel sorry for you, and you should be, are you okay? You need help? I said, in fact, no. I've got so much work to do, because what happened was the borders were closed. A lot of organizations and businesses that used to bring in all their offshore consultants realized there's local talent available. And so there was a big shift in Fiji to shift to local consultants and business advisors, because we understand the environment, we were here. I had picked up quite a bit of job over that period, which, thanks to COVID, I purchased my own Zoom account. I was doing my advisory services and training online on Zoom. I was selling training spots online. So while a lot thought that, I always look at adversity or problems or challenges for opportunities. And I was literally sitting here and running training online. And a lot of organizations, they tapped into it because they couldn't bring their trainers in, and also because of the experience, and they had their staff working from home or didn't have a job. They were paying for their training, and I was doing it quite, I shouldn't say cheaper, but at least more accessible. And I had people from the north of Fiji dialing in, and other parts of the country, that if I had to physically take it out, it would have cost me traveling at least 4 or 5 hours to get out to places to do the training. So thanks to COVID, and again with adversity, for me there's always opportunities.
That is great to hear. And there you go, right? I mean, most people think that COVID is bad for business, but actually COVID it depends on how you look at it, right? You could look at it like, it's bad for business because all the shops are closed. But for people who know how to use the digital space and able to train online, and because your business is also in a position whereby you can do it online or offline.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can do that. online or offline. I was even having my own, like needs assessment and discussions with a client who also had a really good period over COVID. And, a lot of things were online. I was talking to the staff, and I actually did, over that period, their strategic review. And I'm glad that they stood up at that time. And not many businesses would think that way. And I said, this is a really good time to do your strategic review. So we did the entire thing I did over the COVID period was, reviewed their organization, reviewed their governance, reviewed all their policies, all from sitting here.
Was that a breakthrough moment in your business where you felt like, wow, this is it? Was that, was COVID that time?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that gave me a lot more confidence as well. It kind of like boosted my confidence, and I was able to do more. And I think people saw that differentiating factor in me, because a lot of them would still say, oh no, I can't, I need to meet you in person. And they didn't pivot. So I look, even if I can't go out and do consultancy services or meet people, I switched into doing training, and I did training I did a bit of strategic planning training. I did a bit of organizational review training, and organizations were sending their staff online to be listening and to be learning. So things that I would provide services for, I switched it to be training modules. So that's what I did. It was a matter of survival too, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, like, if you were looking at the work that you were doing during that period, during the COVID period, do you think that you did like some of your best work then because of the complications of not being able to meet face to face?
Yeah, I did a lot. And surprisingly, a lot more than I would, when COVID and borders opened and all of that, we all started getting back on the road and meeting people. In fact, meetings took up a lot of time, and they still do, especially the face-to-face, because you can just go on like half an hour to 1 hour to 2 hours even chatting. But sitting in front of my laptop and had my phone with me, that was the most, I would say, productive of time, and for me personally, my business as well.
They actually brought out the best in you.
Yes.
Your business has evolved since its inception in 2019. Besides what you've just shared with me about, being able to network is one of the key things that was really pivotal in helping your business. Were there any other key lessons that you learned throughout your 5-year journey as an entrepreneur?
Some of the key lessons also was being a lot more confident. That's a hard thing, especially for me, is getting myself out there and being confident. I was growing my LinkedIn. I set up my business company, or my company page. I registered online to learn how to do digital marketing and Canva. One of the key lessons is just being open to learning new things. I had no idea what Zoom was, but I was reading about it and researching about it. And, and then we heard, I always knew about Google Meets and all of that, but is getting into the other spaces of technology. One of the key things is understanding that, because when you do it and you understand and appreciate it, then only you can teach it or provide advice on it. I think that's one of the things. You must first of all, be hands-on and do it and understand, and then you can then give your advice and provide services too, because you have that experience and knowledge. But you know what? The other thing is reading, is just researching and doing a lot of reading, and being able to understand, and using all of that as well. I think, and maybe I digress here, but with the evolution and the availability of AI now, even artificial intelligence, that's a big thing. I use it for my business, but I have to be mindful on how I use it. Use it, but be mindful, be aware of how to use it. So, don't just simply copy and paste. I don't do that. I will always relook, review, reword to my style or my personality if I'm writing anything. And I use a lot of it for my training as well, because it's amazing what comes out of that. And so I use a lot of it. I encourage my clients to also use it, but use it in an ethical manner. An ethical manner is important in anything, in fact, that we do.
AI is going to be part and parcel of our lives anyway. So we might as well embrace it rather than say, no, I'm not going to use it. But there are ways to use it that will make our work better in a way.
Absolutely.
It gives us ideas. But of course, in the end, we still need to be the person to really, like you said, reword it or put our own tone and style onto it.
Yes. Yeah, and that's something I tell my clients as well is, use it, embrace it, be conscious of what you're using and doing, and don't simply just copy and paste. You have to re-look at things, reword it to your style, your personality, Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about business and entrepreneurship, but I wanted to get into something that is probably a little more closer to your heart. Is about culture, right? I would like to know, how do you incorporate any aspect of Fijian culture or heritage into what you do or the kinds of services that you provide to your clients, even though those clients within Fiji and probably if you have clients outside of Fiji?
As you can see, I'm not indigenous. I'm not what we call Itauke. My background is I'm third generation Chinese. My dad's born and bred here, and my mom's Fijian Samoan. So, which is why I look as such. I get confused whether I'm Hawaiian or Filipino or even Malaysian, and it's an important question that you ask, because for me it's important first to always understand where I've come from. Yeah, and and I guess that's all about relationship building as well. It's important to understand where I come from. When I first meet customers or clients, I always say where I've come from. I'm from, Maramani Madawata, Mai Lambasa, Vasui, Sapsavu, Dandrove. So I'm from Madawata province in the north of Fiji. The town I was born in is Lambasa, and my mother is from Savu in the province of Dandrove. So when I introduce that, immediately my clients know the connection. They will be able to connect with me immediately, because I always start with introducing myself and where I'm from. And immediately connection starts. I always even include it in when doing business advisory services. When I'm doing, for example, that client that I looked at over the COVID period, when I was doing their entire organizational strategic review, I asked for their breakdown of employees, because I wanted to see the ethnicity break, because Fiji is a very multiracial, multi-ethnic society and community. And I looked at it and they had no idea. I said, look, you need to bring a bit more of mix in ethnicity, in gender, even in age, because by doing so, you're getting even your staff understanding and appreciating the cultures of each other. And they took that on board. It was good to see that, slowly after COVID, they started to get in a lot more different views and not all the one same sort of ethnicity as the owner was. And so those are the kind of things that I encourage also, because it's important for doing business, particularly in Fiji when we're multi-ethnic, multiracial society and community. And doing business is important to embrace that, rather than just going down one pathway of a particular ethnicity or culture or tradition. So that's a big part of what I do as well in terms of my advisory services, particularly for organizational reviews.
It's becoming more important these days, right? With diversity, equity, and inclusion, people need to hear more of that.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm glad I asked that question, because I know that sometimes culture plays a large role in our business, but sometimes we just gloss over it or we don't even mention it. But I think it's good that you start with that, and that itself becomes the icebreaker.
Yes, absolutely. Because that's all about relationships.
I wanted to ask a little bit about Sharyne growing up. I know you just mentioned that, right? North of Fiji, right? So talk to me a little bit about what Sharyne was like as a young girl and teenager and young woman?
So I think I'm known to be the notorious elder of the families. I come from a family of 5, and I'm the eldest. And being the girl, I was brought up having to look after the family as women, and being brought up by a mother who was very traditional. I had to cook. I had to, we all had, all my sisters. So there's 4 sisters and a brother. We all had to do everything. My dad always told us right from when we were growing up, and I always remember my dad saying, you try to be yourself. You be independent. Do not rely on your husband. Be yourself. Have your own bank account. Look after yourself, because you never know. And so, that's something that we grew up knowing, and those are important lessons that I got from my dad from very early. But I'm a fighter. I fight. When I was in school, I punched up a guy.
Oh, wow, Sharyne. Did the teacher take you to the disciplinary office?
That was in primary school, but those are the fun days where little irritating boy was teasing me and all, and I just took him and I just gave him one really good.
Was it the someone in you?
I think so. Yeah, but other than that, I think being the eldest and being brought up as such sort of gave me a lot of when I say I lack confidence in business, but a lot of confidence as a person, as an individual, as a girl growing up. And I always stood up for myself and my sisters and my brother. So I think it's all of those early lessons in life that my parents taught us. I had that confidence. And comparing it now, and a good question, thank you, because I lacked it when I started business.
And why? You had so much experience in banking and finance, right?
Yeah, I did, but I found it really awkward because I was now on my own. That got me a little bit more uncomfortable and not confident with pricing and all of those stuff. And I tell you, it's a different ball game to run a business. Easy to say. I do the training now. I do entrepreneurship training. Easy to say, but I talk from experience. I always say that to the women that come into my entrepreneurship training through the Academy for Women Entrepreneurs. Yeah, very confident, very bold when I was growing up. But when it came to business, that's a different ballgame. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what a realization, right?
Absolutely.
You're so bold. You're so bold in your life.
Yeah. And I come across as that too as a person. But when it came to actually getting out there and doing things for myself on my own with my own business, I was very cautious. And even till today, I've not employed anyone. I'm still my own boss. I'm still my own self. And I think I really need to review and reflect and say, do I employ people, or do I just bid and outsource and find contractors or consultants to pass on work to? Yeah. So I'm still fearful of treading further, if I may use the word.
So, what a journey, right?
Yeah, it is. And thank you. It just got me really thinking about my journey and and the 5 years and what I really need to be starting to do and look forward to next.
And final question before the final question is, what are you most proud of?
Man, I think I'm most proud of being bold enough to step out of my corporate job and starting my own company. I think that's the most proud moment for me. Yeah, and running it now for 5 years. And I do know that most businesses, if they don't survive over 3 years, and now coming to 5 years, and next year will be into my 6th. So I think that's something a proud moment for me. It was kind of frightening, but I guess because I pushed myself out of my comfort zone, in hindsight, I think that was one of the most proudest moment. I can tap myself on the back and say,
yes,
good on
you too. I'll pat you virtually.
Yeah. Easy to talk about, easy to say, but frightening. But again, it's good. It's gratifying.
Yeah. It's gratifying when we come out the other side.
Yes.
Okay, so the final question is, where can people find you to connect with you online?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. So personally under Sharyne Fong, also with my business, it's called Insight Business Advisory. And so I've got my own LinkedIn page, and I've actually got a lot of requests coming through. I don't have a website, and that's another thing I'm fearful of, is if I go out too publicly or too much, because I'm still one person, I fear that if I might get a lot of requests and then I won't be able to cope as well. So
that's a good problem, Sharyne. That's a good problem. That is a really good problem. You can't cope, it's okay. It will be a good problem to solve.
Yes. And so that's why I haven't had. And look, I met Tanya. You and I know Tanya, and that's something that her and I are, thinking about when we get the time to chat and sit down and mutually collaborate, not only for business, but also she's willing to help me even set up a website for myself. So, yeah. So I'm excited. And again, through networks.
Yeah. So here's a little backstory. So before we end, I just wanted to say how I met Sharyne is that both of us were part of a US program called the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework Program that we went for 2 weeks. We were there for 2 weeks in the US. We enjoyed ourselves very much. We had many occasions where we talked about women and entrepreneurship. I think even on the first day itself, we were already talking about entrepreneurship. We already knew what we wanted to talk about. And because of that is why we came together with 2 other friends from the program to start a regional alliance. And so I want to announce it here too, that Sharyne and I and Tanya from India and Mona from the Philippines, we're starting the Network of Entrepreneurial Women Associations for ASEAN, Pacific, and India. And it's a regional alliance for women associations in the region. Yeah. So that's how networks are built, right? Networks are built on top of other networks.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember when I was sharing about my experience from Fiji, and what I was trying to do was to set up a Pacific network or regional network for the Pacific for similar women entrepreneurs, and you challenged me and you said, why only the Pacific, why not wider? I said, okay, well, let's do it. So so from a Pacific network, and that's something we're working on as well from a Pacific perspective, still scoping it. And new API, I'm excited. And for our Pacific sisters,
sometimes we need a challenge we need to challenge each other in a positive way. I mean, I'm not challenging you in a bad way. I'm challenging to say that, hey, why not think bigger? I felt, and I always feel this, that sometimes we can't challenge ourselves the way others challenge us.
Yes.
And if you're the sort who likes a good challenge, you would just take it on and say, hey, why not, right? So that is why I asked you that question, because someone asked me that question so many years ago when I wanted to start my podcast. And she said, why a podcast for just Malaysian women in business? Why not widen the scope? And that's how I decided to widen the scope and say, why not? And that's how we all ended up in this together, right? How all the connections started to come in because of this widening work.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you get challenged like that, I call it like a pay it forward. You got challenged, you paid it forward and challenged me. And, I could have said, no, we're going to be just doing this. But I'm the type of person, and I think that's why we just connected so well. I'm the type of person to take on a challenge and to make sure that it's done. Yeah, so very excited.
Yeah, super excited. So thank you, Sharyne. I am glad that you are on my podcast, and I'm glad that we had a great conversation about we wanted to have another angle, but I like this angle that we came up with 5 minutes before we started recording. I think that this angle really works because it really speaks to the heart of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Real challenges.
Thank you. I'm so excited and proud and delighted that you approached me to be on this. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Womenpreneur Asia. Sharyne Fong's story reminds us that courage, adaptability, and a strong network can help us achieve great things in entrepreneurship. If Sharyne's story inspired you to think differently and think optimistically, share this episode with your friends. For more stories like this, subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. Let's continue to celebrate and empower women entrepreneurs across Asia. See you next Friday for another inspiring story.